Is the London system a boring chess opening? You have Fabiano Caruana saying that it is a fighting opening where you get complicated middle games without getting into concrete variations. If you're not a Grandmaster, those words might not mean much to you, but Dean Lee Rin recently used it to create a win in the World Championship match, giving the London system an undefeated success rate in World Championship matches. Even more recently, in the Cairns Cup, an all-female chess event going on in St. Louis, Grandmaster Bella Khotenashvili used it against Grandmaster Irina Krush, and the game was described as a game where Bella threw the kitchen sink at her opponent. Let's check it out. This is day 4 of the Cairns Cup. We have d4, d5. Like I said, we get into the London. And Irina Krush plays with c5, one of the main critical ways to play against the London, trying to immediately pressure the center. And Bella just says, nah, no worries, I'm going to complete my setup. And here we have it. We have the triangle of dark square pawns, and we have the dark square bishop on the outside of the pawn train. After bishop to d6, black is immediately challenging this bishop. And white often plays bishop g3, basically saying, if you take my bishop, then h takes g3, and my rook, which was sitting alone in a corner with nowhere to go, all of a sudden has a semi-open file, and if black short castles, then hey, it has a target too. But of course, black says, okay, let's take a chill pill. I'm just going to go ahead and castle, but I'm going to leave the tension between the dark square bishops. And here, Bella plays bishop d3, which puts the bishop on the best square possible to pressure the black king. Irina goes for b6, planning to fianchetto her bishop, and here we have an interesting move. Because at this point, we've had 161 games in the master database still, thousands of games in the London, only 161 made it to this point, and only 2 games make it to a4. And in the post-game interview, Bella said that this was a waiting move. She wanted to see if black would break the tension and take the bishop and open up the rook. Of course, Irina says, nope, no thank you, I will play queen to e7. And here is the secondary idea behind a4. It's to push a5, which looks like a complete pawn sacrifice. And I really had to dig in to figure out what was going on here. What's going on is that knight takes a5, and now you have d takes c5. And the question is, what do you take back with, the pawn or the bishop? Well, you can't take back with the pawn, that hangs your knight. That's completely winning for white. So if you take back with the bishop, then b4, and Bella is forking Irina. But that's why, of course, we don't do either of those, and black would have to take the bishop on g3, and after it takes, you're already quite happy as white. You're getting tons of pressure over here. Just say after queen takes c5, knight to e5, white is completely freezing the center because this knight can never really move because of it has to protect h7. So white is about to start pushing all the pawns, g4, g5, and just shove everything forward and break apart the king side. Stockfish is unconcerned, but I would never ever want to play this position with the black pieces. And you know who else doesn't want to play this position with the black pieces? Irina Krush, because she does not take the free pawn immediately. Instead, she expertly plays c4 and says, okay, move your bishop. You don't have any d takes c5 plans anymore. Now I will take your free pawn. Thank you very much. And Bella says, fine, you can have the pawn, but now your knight is all the way over here on the a5 square. How about bishop h4? I'm hitting your knight, and also I'm preparing my pawn stormed. So queen to d8, so that after g4, black can simply play bishop to e7, adding some more defenders. But now we get bishop takes f6. After you take back, h4, and the pawn storm is raging on. The pawns are going to attack the king. You got a bishop, you got a rook, you have potentially knights that are going to get into play as well. And what happens? Bishop to e7, knight g5 right away. h6 attacking the knight, and boom, knight h7. The knight has infiltrated, it's hitting the rook, and the rook moves out of the way. And after white plays g5, sure, you could try your best to play g6 and take the knight, but you gotta watch out for h5, because if you try and take the knight now, h takes g6, and that's with check supported by the bishop, the rook's opening up, and you're getting bulldozed. So for that reason, g6 is not really a good move here. But instead we get knight to b3. It's a mistake, but only because of one move. There's an insane computer line here, which we just had to explore because it's so crazy. Queen h5. White has to be willing to part ways with the rook. The bishop is under attack. Save the bishop because it's super important in this attack / defending the knight here. And after a move just like queen c7, then we have g takes h6. We're trying to rip this king open. And after g6, because you don't want to allow the king to get ripped open, bishop takes g6 because, okay, well, this is just mate in 2. Black would never play this. Instead, maybe king h8, and you have to move your bishop all the way back to b1. After this, rook to g8 to protect the king. Queen takes f7, and bishop to d8. In this position, black is just up a rook, okay? Black's plan is clear. Trade all the material down and get to an endgame where you're just up a rook or up a piece, you're happy. White, on the other hand, is going for more venomous ideas. Knight to g5 is a savage way to trade queens off with checkmate. The bishop covers this square, the pawn covers this one, and it's check. So, of course, what you have to do as black, you have to sacrifice the exchange back, and you would still be up a piece. Because now when pieces get traded off, black has literally an extra bishop. But they have the bishop in exchange for a couple of pawns, and the pawns are storming down the board to promotion. If you could see through all this, then I think that would be Bella's immortal game. But let's get out of robot land, back to earth. And after knight to b3, we see Bella take and then play bishop d3. And you notice that the pressure is still there. It's not like the knight on d2 is really playing a huge role in the attack. So really, White's still quite happy. There's still plenty of pressure. But Irina finds the only move that is not just completely losing on the spot, and that is e5. You see that the rook and the queen and the king are all on the same file. You're being attacked on your king side. White's king is in the center. So if you try to open up the center, then it opens up lines of attack to have counterplay. So after e5, we have takes, and Irina says, I will shove everything forward and continue trying to break everything open. But Bella doesn't care because she just plays rook g1, sacking a pawn and opening up the king again. But after c takes b2, there's a trap here because it looks like so natural to just take on g7. But if you take on g7, somehow this king is totally safe on h8. It's using White's pieces as a giant umbrella. You have to save your rook, so you play rook d1, thinking that you're lining up with the queen. But now bishop b4 and queen takes h4, and mate in 1 is threatened. So you have to give your king some space, but now rook takes, and all of a sudden the script is flipped. Like I said, this king is using these pieces as a big umbrella. It's not under check, and these pieces can't coordinate to deliver check. And meanwhile, black has three and a half pieces that are attacking this white king. So for that reason, Bella does not fall for the temptation. Instead of taking on g7, she plays rook d1 first. And here black takes this time to play g6 to give the king a little bit of breathing room. But now, at this point, both players are just playing blitz because they both have 5 minutes or less. 5 minutes for Bella and 2 minutes for Irina. Yeah, as you can imagine, it's move 25. They have another 15 moves to make the extra time control of 30 minutes to their clock. And they're just blitzing out moves. So queen takes b2. Instead of queen takes b2, the critical line was actually knight to g5, only winning plan. After bishop takes, you have to take back with the rook. Maybe there's some plans to sacrifice the bishop here with a discover attack on the queen. Maybe there's plans of h5 in the future. Maybe even sacrificing the rook, depending on where this queen goes. And just total pandemonium. But with 5 minutes on the clock, Bella instead opts to play queen takes b2. And after king takes the knight finally, we get the scenario where bishop d5 is played. It's actually a sneaky little tactic here by white. Bishop takes g6, and after you take back, well, the bishop that was previously on d3 reveals an attack from the rook. So after rook takes d5, the queen is hit, and white is still trying to put pressure on this king side. After queen to c7, there is a fancy move here. Rook to d7. If you take that, then of course this is just checkmate. But Bella said she didn't like rook to d7 because she saw queen to e5. And this makes life a lot more difficult for white to find a way through because of the check. And if you try and take, then bishop b4 check, king f1, and black forces everything off. and is just threatening to trade material while being up a piece. So you just have to get out of the way. And Stockfish thinks that this is a perfect draw because black is constantly trying to trade material, white is constantly trying to find a way to checkmate. So you just kind of repeat moves, and that's it. But see, the London is not boring. Stockfish is boring. So we go back to before Stockfish had these crazy recommendations, and we get h5 continuing the attack. After g5, Bella plays e6. The computer is unafraid. The computer finds some sort of idea with rook to g8 or king takes h6, but Bella is trying to open up more lines of attack to this king and restrict space. With 7 seconds on her clock, Irina Krush plays rook to d8, which is devastating because she misses the idea of queen d3 check, king h8, queen d4 check. And after bishop f6, only move, because if you move the king anywhere, then queen to g7 is checkmate. Bishop f6, giving the piece back. King moves, and we see a couple moves of repetition here, but actually in this position, Bella takes on g5. It's still completely winning, but there was a mate that was missed. And really quickly, after king to h7, go ahead and pause the solve to see if you can find one of the critical ideas here. That critical idea is rook to d7. Not capturing the rook, but rook to d7 check, trying to hit both of these pieces at the same time. And if you take with the rook, then queen to g6, the king moves, and you actually fork the king and the rook. You pick this one up with check, the king moves back, and you simply take this rook, and all of a sudden, you've traded everything down, this pawn's going to promote, and you're checkmating. But again, at this point, I mean, Bella literally had like 1 minute on her clock. She's trying to find a way that's practical to live off of the 30-second increment and go and finish the game. And that's exactly why she just takes on g5. After a couple of queen checks, black forces everything off the board. Just by taking here, we see this mass trade, and black is saying, well, you have an extra 2 pawns, but like they're pretty worthless. And shortly, we actually see exactly that. White's able to get a little mini fork in here, picking up a pawn, and meanwhile, black is over here gobbling up the 2 extra pawns. So we see a 2-on-1, and white's rook is actually ends up being much more active. And very, very nice technique from Bella. We see black's rook trying desperately to try and give all these checks or restrict white's movement, but eventually we see this nice little ladder technique by Bella. She moves her king all the way through this ladder pattern to get to the rook, and the rook runs out of checks. So we see this little snaking movement, and there's no way for black to give another check, so the rook goes away. But now we get e5, and white's making more progress. Irina gives up the pawn, basically saying I'm playing strictly for a draw here, and after rook to h7, the king has to move away. e6, very, very expert level move, saying, yeah, go ahead and fork me, but I don't care if you fork me, because you can take my pawn. I will play king d6, threatening to play e7 check, and if you go try to hunt down my rook, e7 anyway, you take, and now I have a queen versus rook. Not the easiest thing to convert, but let's just skip forward to this point where Bella gets her queen to c8. Of course, she's hitting the rook, but more importantly, she is now protecting the a6 square from checks. She's threatening checkmate on 2 different squares. So how do you deal with it? Irina Krush, with 1 second left on her clock, plays the move, rook f5. And if you think this is her resigning, it's not just yet. You have a 50-50% chance. Do you take with the queen or the king? Let me know in the comments below. But if you take with the queen, that is a nasty stalemate track. That is a nasty stalemate trip. Ugh, I can't talk. That is a nasty stalemate trick or a nasty stalemate trap. Either way, Bella does not fall for it. Instead, she takes with the king, and Irina resigns in this position. An amazing game by Bella, and part of a huge stir-up in round 4 of the Cairns Cup. You have both tournament leaders, Alexandra Kosteniuk and Irina Krush, going down on day 4, and you now have Anna Zatonski in the lead with 3 out of 4 games. But wait, there's more. One more big newsflash is that the defending Cairns Cup champion, Humpy Konru, is now withdrawing from the event due to health issues. So I hope she feels better, but it does change the results, because Any result that she has played so far is nullified, which means that Alexandra Kosteniuk does not just lose today, but she also loses the full point that she earned against Humpy Konru. And that full point earned was not just any game. It was a beautiful king walk. And if you haven't seen it yet, go check out the end of this video right over there. Happy learning, everyone.